what is your favorite lens? Is it the one that's the sharpest, the most versatile, or the one with the most character? Now, everyone is different, and for me, my favorite lens would have to be this, the Canon 50mm 1.4 LTM. Now, this is a lens originally designed for the Canon 7 rangefinder system, and it's one of 4 Canon 50mm LTM lenses. The 1.8, the 1.4, the 1.2, and the legendary Dream lens, the 50-0.95. And the 1.4 is considered to be a nice middle ground between price and image quality. And while I've never personally tried any of the other Canon LTM 50s, I have done a little bit of research online, and from what I've read, the 1.8 is considered to be the worst of the 4. The 1.2 has quite a bit more chromatic aberration and fringing than the 1.4. And the 0.95 is, well, like $5,000. That said, I would love to try the 0.95 out. That is a very, very cool lens. Maybe someday in the future, I'll give it a go. The 1.4 has just been absolutely perfect for me. And I'm very, very satisfied with it. Now, all of the 50s use a LTM screw mount. L39, I think is what it's called. And it's very, very easily adapted to the M mount. So it's literally just like a $15 screw-on adapter. And ever since I got the lens, basically, I've just had the adapter screwed onto it. So I've owned this lens since 2016, but this lens is actually quite a bit older than that. It was actually manufactured in 1957, which makes this lens 67 years old this year. And despite owning many sharper and more practical lenses, over the 8 years of using this lens and using it extensively on film and digital, I have to say that I am absolutely smitten with this little gem. And in today's video, I'd like to go over why it's so good and show you plenty of example photos. So be sure to watch until the end to hear all of my thoughts. And before we go any further, be sure to subscribe to see more great photography content. Now, what makes a lens that is older than my parents so special other than its age? Well, it's the way that it renders images. Not just in like a vintage kind of vibe, but rather the range that this lens can achieve. So it can go from being a soft, vintage, and dreamy portrait lens when you shoot it wide open at 1.4 to being, very, very sharp and almost as good as some modern lenses when you stop it down to f4 and above. This lens is affectionately called the Japanese Summilux by many in the community, and for good reason. So compared to a Leica 51.4 Summilux of similar vintage, the results are actually very similar for all the good reasons. And unlike the 50 Summilux, this lens is actually very affordable to buy on the used market. So I paid just $300 Australian for my copy in 2016, but unlike so many other camera-related things, the price for these hasn't actually hit stratospheric levels, and you can still find these on eBay easily for around $450 to $500 Australian in excellent condition. Accounting for inflation, $300 in 2016 is $372 today, so we're not actually far off. Now, if you're looking for a copy of these online, you might notice that there's actually 2 versions of this lens that were produced. So this is the version 1. It was produced from 1957 to 1958, and the version 2, which was produced from 1959 all the way up to 1972. Now, optically, they are identical, but the version 2 has both feet and meters on the distance scale, whereas version 1 had just either feet or meters. I had no idea about this at all when I bought this lens, so I'm glad that it's got the meters on it, given I live in a metric country, so I'm happy with that. Now, mine is not in the best condition, but, given that it's at least 66 years old, I don't really mind, as the lens still performs really well, and everything feels really solid. The aperture ring is nice and smooth, there's no oil on the blades, and I haven't really been kind to this lens. This lens has been everywhere with me. I've used this lens in the rain, I've used this lens on so many different cameras, and it's always been great, no issues at all. I probably will CLA this lens in the future though. It could probably do with a little bit of lube. I feel like the focus ring is maybe a little bit it's got a bit of a weird kind of focusing. It's not super smooth. Now, what I love about this lens is the stunning swirly bokeh and the characteristics when shot wide open. You get this really beautiful, dreamy, almost smudgy appearance, which looks amazing on film, but also works really, really great on digital. But the best bit is that if you stop it down to f2.8 and above, it actually becomes fairly sharp, even on modern high resolution digital sensors, yet without a very clinical sort of rendering like some modern lenses would be. And it's actually like, it's basically like you get a lomography effects lens so that you get like a, you know, real sort of dreamy look. But you also get a really sharp 50mm all-in-one just by changing the aperture. So that makes it very versatile, and it makes it very, very just very unique. There is a noticeable amount of flaring, which can either be a plus or a minus depending on what you're looking for. I personally think that it adds so much character. I love how like wild the flares can look in this, but you know, I understand it's probably not for everyone. I can see it being pretty annoying, but you know, like I said, this video isn't about the best lens I've ever used. It's not about the most versatile lens I've ever used. It's about my favorite lens. And something being, you know, your favorite, it doesn't necessarily have to be technically the best. I just think that this lens has so much character and personality, and like every image that I've ever gotten, I've shot probably my favorite photos ever with this lens. Yeah, I adore it. Also, just real quick, this video is not sponsored, but if you'd like to help to support me and support my channel, definitely be sure to check out my presets. So I've got 2 Lightroom preset packs out at the moment, and they're what I use to edit all of my photos. So everything that you see in this video and in all my videos that isn't shot on film is edited with those preset packs. So yeah, be sure to check them out. There's you can actually get 25% off if you subscribe to my newsletter as well. So they are very, very good value too. And I hope you guys love them. Now, I've shot probably 80% of the photos with my M2 with this lens on the front of it, and I've used it with my M8. I've used it with an M9, I've used it with an MD262, and it's been amazing on every single M body that I've ever tried it on. And I know that like lots of Leica elitists shudder at the mere thought that you would use anything but a lens made in Wetzlar on their precious M body, but my message to them is very simple. Keep up that attitude. You are part of the reason that these are still affordable. Now, I also tested this lens on my Lumix S1R, which is a camera with a 47 megapixel sensor, and I honestly expected the performance to be miserable, but I was actually really pleasantly surprised. This lens performs great from 2.8 onwards, as expected, but yeah, at 1.4, this is really, really soft. Like, it's less visible on film, but on a really high resolution sensor, it's definitely very, very soft, like all the way throughout the frame. And it almost looks like you've got the shot out of focus. But the only thing is I will say is this lens looks absolutely ridiculous mounted on a modern sort of like high resolution camera, like an S1R or like a Sony or something. It's just, the way it looks is just, it's funny. It looks really funny. I think it suits the aesthetics of like the X Pro 1 or like an M body, for example, a lot better. It looks a lot better on those cameras. I think this lens works great on Fuji just as well as it does on full frame. But this lens is not all perfect, and there are some things that I don't like about it. So for starters, being such an old lens, and also being that this is a really old rangefinder lens, the minimum focus distance is it's a meter. Which is yeah, that's pretty crazy. I don't recall the last time I used a lens that had a focus distance that was that long. Yeah, a meter focusing distance, close focusing distance at least, makes it very, very difficult to shoot close-up portraits at least. In fact, almost impossible. You kind of have to sort of have everyone, like, you can't do like face only, you have to do kind of torso face up. And considering that modern 50mm lenses have minimum focus distances of literally half of that, sometimes even more than half of that, it does make a noticeable difference, especially if you're used to how modern lenses operate. Secondly, it has this really annoying as hell focus lock, which I absolutely loathe. So it's got like a little nub here, and when you sort of pull to the end, it locks the focus in like that. Now, I don't know why this lock is on here, but it would have been so much better if it wasn't on here. If someone can educate me and tell me why focus locks were even invented in the first place, I would love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments below. Now, thirdly, I guess this is a negative as much as it's a positive, but this is a vintage lens. It is old, it has imperfections, and it is not perfect. And that goes for the image quality. At wide open, this is probably one of the softest lenses that I've ever actually tried. It suffers from atrocious chroma artifacts, fringing, and plenty more, but only at wide open. See, once you stop it down to f2.8 and above, it just gets better and better. That said, I think this is a lens that is really much better on film than digital, as film helps to hide some of its flaws behind a more sort of artsy medium, but using it on an old digital body like the M8 or M9 or the X Pro 1 really helps to mask a lot of its problems. even if I was pleasantly surprised with how well this lens performs on a high resolution modern digital body like the S1R. So who is this lens for? Well, I think this is a stunning portrait lens no matter what system you're on, and I think it's an excellent option for someone who has only had modern lenses and perhaps wants to see what the hype is about vintage glass without having to spend too much money. And because this is an M-mount lens, it's actually really easy to adapt this lens to literally any other system. So no matter what you use, you can shoot with, you can likely mount this on your camera. This is a Earth M to L adapter, so you can use this on L mount. They make these, I have one of these for Fuji. I have one of these for Canon as well, for EF and RF as well. These are really good adapters. I like them. I'm not sponsored by Earth. This is completely this is just me really liking the brand. I think they're really good. If you do want to sponsor me, let me know. No, I do like the Earth ones are really good. I think these are solid adapters. If you own an M body, you are honestly doing yourself a serious disservice by not trying this lens out on it. It is truly sensational. This lens really is one of my all-time favorites, up there with the Zeiss to it, and I cannot speak highly enough about it. Get one today before people realize just how good they are and they become much more expensive. So what do you guys think? Have you ever tried this lens out before? Is there any other lenses from this kind of time period that you would recommend? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys next week.